Hello, my name is Paul Lima, the bathrobed author. Between the pandemic and my multiple sclerosis, when I get up, I basically stay in my bathrobe, not bathroom, bathrobe all day until it is my turn to walk the dog. Mind you, with my multiple sclerosis, my wife is picking up more of the domestic duties, so I sometimes walk the dog in the morning and the afternoon. And when I walk him in the morning, I do get dressed, I promise you. However, I'm not here to talk about pandemics or multiple sclerosis. Believe it or not, this is a book promotion. I am the author of 3 books, one a book of short stories, Rebel in the Back Seat, and 2 novels. One called Chronic, a sick novel, and one called Geri, an LGBTQ novel. So what do I want to say about my books? First of all, let me give you a little bit of my background. I live in Toronto, one of the most cosmopolitan cities in the world. So it should come as no surprise that Rebel in the Backseat has nothing but white people in it. Mind you, these were short stories that I wrote when I was younger. And the city, although cosmopolitan, was basically white. There were some people of color in Toronto when I was growing up, no denying it, but not like today. I'm Italian in terms of background, and we were maybe the most exotic cosmopolitan thing in Toronto. So in Rebel in the Backseat, there are some Italians. All the people are white and nobody has any strange sexual orientations. Not that sexual orientations beyond straight are strange. I myself have had several bent adventures growing up. So Rebel in the Backseat, though, is what I call a coming of age, no matter the age, book of short stories. Everybody in Rebel in the Backseat in every story comes of age in some way. It is set in Toronto with a foray in one of the stories into Montreal, but basically the book is set in Toronto. I'm not going to tell you about all the short stories in it. Just 2. Rebel in the Backseat is about a kid who rebels in the backseat of a car owned by a mafiosa, shall we say. He's in conflict with his religious family, basically leaves home and does some work for the mob at the tender age of 16. Loosely, very, very loosely based on my life in that I grew up in a religious family. The other story I want to tell you about in Rebel in the Backseat is called Hockey Night on Ossington Avenue. Go Leafs, go! I was, as any kid growing up in Toronto is, a Toronto Maple Leafs hockey fan. Played hockey in the laneway behind my house on Ossington Avenue. When we got older and the kids moved to playing hockey on the Grenadier Pond in High Park, my career basically came to an end. So in Hockey Night on Ossington Avenue, I fantasize about my career continuing. My career came to an end because I couldn't skate worth a damn. In Hockey Night on Ossington Avenue, the kid, the hero of the story, who is a great laneway goalie, gets some skates from his older brother at Christmas time. I don't think it's giving too much away to say his older brother has stolen the skates. Anyway, he gets, whoa, it's like forgetting my own story. He gets a hockey sweater from his older brother who has stolen the hockey sweater, gets some skates from his parents, and makes it on to Grenadier Pond to play goal. Of course, the first time he steps onto the ice, he falls flat on his ass, and his smart-ass cousin Peter zooms by him on skates and says, "Yeah, way to go." It's all about his first game and how he goes from abject, can't stay on his feet, to a pretty decent goaltender who stops Peter on a breakaway. And I won't tell you what happens next. Anyway, that's Rebel in the Backseat. I think I've told you about the title story, Rebel in the Backseat, and Hockey Night on Ossington Avenue. There are 9 other stories in the book. Now, these stories were written as I was growing up. Yes, I've been a writer since I was 14 and wrote my very first really bad poem. Wrote a lot of short stories over my life and eventually put them together into a book which I self-published. Take off 15, 20 years from writing. Not that I stopped writing, but I wrote nonfiction. I've got like 20 plus books at paullima.com/books. There you can read about my fiction and nonfiction books. paullima.com/books. Since developing MS, well, I've had it for 22 years, but I've had it kind of not so hot the last 6 or 7 years. It's forced me to retire from my writing and writing training career. I was a freelance writer and trainer. Loved my job, loved doing it. But MS forced me to retire, and I suspect even without the pandemic, or without my MS, the pandemic would have diminished the amount of work that I could do. However, I am officially retired. When the pandemic ends, I will not go back to writing training, at least writing for corporations. So what I have done in the last 2 years, even though I feel like crap a lot, is I've written 2 novels. Geri, my LGBTQ novel, and Chronic. Interestingly enough, the characters in my writing in these 2 novels have changed a lot from the characters in Rebel in the Backseat. There are people of color. There are obviously people of different sexual orientation in these novels. These novels are much more reflective of the city of Toronto. That's where they take place, the city I still live in. I think I had to grow up and change as the city changed, evolved as the city evolved. Now, I confess, I was concerned when I wrote my LGBTQ novel that people would say, "Paul, other than some dalliances in your youth, you're basically a straight white guy. What are you doing writing an LGBTQ novel with people of color in it?" I believe the novelist should break out of their perspective, adopt the perspective of others. In fact, writing from an LGBTQ perspective has enabled me to say things about my city and the way it functions and the way people operate and the way some people think that I couldn't say as a straight white man. So it has allowed me to broaden my horizons, broaden the horizons of my writing, broaden the horizons of my perspective. Now, Geri is a comedy. In fact, Geri is a spoof in many ways of Seinfeld. Seinfeld is the most heterosexual comedy out there. Imagine if the four main characters were LGBTQ. That's the premise of Geri. Geri, with a G, G-E-R-I, is in fact a stand-up comedian. Geri is not a funny comedian, at least in the conventional sense of the word. But as one of Geri's friends says, Geri is funny because they are not funny. They, non-binary. Now, I have a non-binary child. I have a brother who is gay, a sister who is gay. Again, that doesn't give me the right to adapt the LGBTQ persona. I think being a writer gives me the right to adapt that persona and look at the world not through my eyes, but through the eyes of people who are not me. And it becomes a much more interesting world, at least to me and from my perspective. Geri is a comedy. There are serious moments in the novel as well, but there's no denying it. Now, I'm not a funny person, so to write a comedy was not easy. To write a stand-up comedian was not easy. But again, Geri is not a funny stand-up comedian. Every chapter starts with Geri delivering a set, and then the set that Geri delivers the chapter is related to the set that Geri delivers. And with that, we go different places. There are sexual connotations. There are religious connotations. There are straight versus LGBTQ connotations. There are police connotations. There are many connotations. These are serious issues, and yet we laugh. If you go to paullima.com/books, you can read about Geri. You can read about what some readers have said about Geri. I'm biased as the author. I think it's a funny novel with serious connotations, but overarching is the humor, the comedy, the funny. So to say writing from an LGBTQ perspective was a stretch for me is honest. But because I'm not a funny person, writing a comedy was a stretch for me. I believe authors should stretch themselves to the extent that makes sense for them. I mean, I'm not a genre writer. I don't write romance. I don't write true crime. I don't write murder mysteries. I don't write other genres. So Geri is, if I can use the word, literature. But it's also a comedy. It's a funny book. So paullima.com/books, read about Geri. Also, if you go to my website, you can read about Chronic, a sick novel. Chronic, you might say, is a more personal book. In Chronic, 4 people move in together into a house, and they all have different diseases or disabilities. One has MS. His name happens to be Paul. I am Paul Lima. His last name isn't Lima, but his first name is Paul, and he has MS. He happens to have been a writer-trainer. Gee, that's me. So Chronic is written more from a perspective that I have experienced. Other people in Chronic, one has Parkinson's disease. I know somebody who has Parkinson's disease. The character in Chronic is not based on him, but I know somebody and I know what he deals with. One person is in remission from cancer. I've known people who have had cancer. So again, not based on anybody I know, but I have some understanding of that perspective. And one person is in a wheelchair. I've known people in wheelchairs, on scooters, etc. Again, not based on anybody I know, but I think the perspective is something I understand. And these 4 people move in together and life happens. Chronic is basically saying to sick people, you can have life. It may be more difficult. You may have to work harder at it, but you can have it. And it is saying to healthy people, hey, look, just because you have an illness, a disease, a disability, doesn't mean life ends. These people get on with life. They push and motivate each other to get on with their lives. It builds to a moment that in the beginning of Chronic, Paul doesn't think he can do. But as he's motivating the fellow in the wheelchair turns around and motivates him as well. And they both peak because they work to motivate each other to do what they can do within their limitations. And there are limitations. There's no denying it. I'm not going to give away the ending of the book. All I'm going to say is that everybody in the book struggles to accomplish what they can accomplish. Now, is Chronic funny? Is it a comedy? Is it a tragedy? There are humorous moments in Chronic, no doubt about it. There are serious moments in Chronic, no doubt about it. And there are tragic moments in Chronic, no doubt about it. I think the book combines all of that as life combines all of that. Hey, there's funny aspects to my life, there's serious aspects to my life, and there are some tragic aspects to my life. I would say not only mine, but pretty much anybody watching this has most, if not all, of those aspects to their life. So Chronic is a book in which life happens. Just the main characters, the 4 main characters, happen to have disabilities, illnesses, physical setbacks that they have to work through. Again, if you go to paullima.com/books, you can read about Chronic and you can see what the beta readers have said. Really pleased with the feedback I've received on the book. So that's it from me, Paul Lima, the bathrobe author. Take the bathrobe off, put on my clothes when I have to walk the dog this afternoon. If you're interested, go to paullima.com/books. You can read about Rebel in the Backseat, Geri and Chronic, as well as my 20-plus nonfiction books. As I said, I was a freelance writer trainer, and the books that I have written are pretty much all about writing, various aspects of writing, be it promotional writing, business writing, social media writing, writing for the web. I have also written my memoir, and I have written a book on MS. Now, lest you sit back and say, here's Paul doing the hard sell on his books. Yeah, I would love it if you want to buy a paperback, an EPUB, or Kindle version of any of my books. But if you go to my website and if you read PDFs, if you see a book you like and you want the PDF, email me from my website and say, Paul, can you send me the PDF of fill in the name of the book that you want? And I will send you, no charge. I'll send you the PDF of the book. Why? Because I'm a nice guy. Because I'm an author and I'm 66 years old and I'm sick, and I love it when people read my books. I can't afford to send you the paperback, EPUB, or Kindle, but I can send you the PDF. Happy to do that. If you choose to buy a paperback, EPUB, or Kindle of any of my books, you've made me a happy man. But if you ask for a free PDF, you've also made me a happy man, because I know you're going to be reading my book. And at my age, with my disease, knowing that people are reading my books, which I believe are well worth reading, makes me a happy man. Anyway, Thank you for watching my book promotion. Have yourself a good day. Stay well. Take care. Bye now.